13. On the early morning of Monday, July 27th, 1981, a newscaster named John Wydra on WCBS radio in New York City made an utterly inarguable and utterly mind-blowing statement about a labor dispute. Quote, "The next development in the strike isn't expected until today," unquote, implying that there existed some chance somehow, somewhere, that the next development could be expected to happen yesterday. I thought of this because Kamala Harris has chosen her running mate, or will have chosen her running mate, or, as you already know, but I don't as I record this, she has chosen her running mate. Earlier for you, but later for me, because John Wydra, astutely rewriting on the fly some outdated copy that must have read "until tomorrow," John Wydra was right. The next development in the Veep stakes is not expected until today. Walz or Shapiro, according to Reuters, the finalists. I'll get to that. But despite the near universal contention otherwise, the vice presidency isn't the lead story, and the decision may or may not make any damn difference. The Morning Consult and Decision Desk poll numbers are the lead story. She is ahead 48-44. A week ago in Morning Consult, she was ahead by 1 point. 2 weeks ago, Trump was ahead by 2 points. The vice president is ahead in that poll among independents 42-37. She's ahead among voters under the age of 35 by 49-40. Morning Consult also does what it calls a news cycle poll. Have you heard positive things or negative buzz about the candidates? I swear they use the word buzz. And after the Republican convention, Trump was at almost 50-50 positive and negative stories, positive and negative buzz. And in 2 weeks since, he has sunk to 23 points underwater. Negative buzz. In the same span, the Harris Express has retained its speed. Her favorability in this poll was at 50% last week. It is now virtually the same at 48%. They also did some polling on Harris versus Trump attributes. Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. State by state, Trump wins who's too old in a landslide. Harris wins who's mentally fit in a landslide, like 48-35. Harris also wins less dangerous in a landslide. Harris wins cares about me, based on the state, from 2 points to 10 points. She's tied him on strong leader in Michigan, is within 7 points on strong leader in 3 other states, and who is more presidential? Harris wins in Arizona, Michigan, and Wisconsin. It is tied in Nevada. He wins most presidential by 1 point in Georgia. That was before that farce over the weekend. He wins it by 3 points in North Carolina and 4 points in Pennsylvania. Survey USA came out yesterday with national polling done on Sunday. Harris by 3. 3 weeks ago, that poll was Trump by 3. It's another 6-point swing. CBS News put out a poll with YouGov on Sunday that had Harris ahead nationally by 1. In its poll, Joe Biden never led. Never. This was the first CBS poll since Trump led Biden by 5. CBS has them tied in the swing states. Morning Consult will presumably have a new set of swing state raw numbers, polls for Bloomberg today. They put one out last Tuesday, and in that, Harris led huge in Michigan by 1 or 2 points in Arizona, Nevada, and Wisconsin, was tied in Georgia, was behind by 2 in North Carolina, behind by 4 in Pennsylvania. Her net lead in all 7 of the states last week was 1 point. So watch to see if there is a new one today or maybe tomorrow. Early vote action polled the state of Pennsylvania, and it finds Pennsylvania tied 48-48 or 45-45 with Kennedy at 4, and so what, except Early Vote Action is the group led by that sleazy Trumpist Scott Pressler, the one who bills himself as the Persistence. It's tied in the persistence poll in Pennsylvania. Persistence, as in, if symptoms persist longer than 4 hours, see your doctor. Decision Desk HQ, I mentioned them earlier. They put out an average of swing state polls yesterday, and it shows Harris gaining in 9 out of 10 battleground states, and the only one she hasn't gained in is Virginia, where President Biden led by 3, and she leads by 3. Per Decision Desk, she has already taken away Trump's lead in Michigan by 1 point, cut his 7-point leads in Arizona and Georgia to 3-point leads, cut his 9-point lead in Nevada to 3 points, cut his 10-point lead in North Carolina to 3 points. Again, I am at just about the point where the numbers will make my head explode, and I'm sitting here looking at them. I can read along with my voice. The gist of this is, it's like at some singular points along a road or even a city street. We have them here along parts of Park Avenue where you can see 10 or sometimes it seems like 20 intersections at a time and the traffic lights. You are only startled by one occurrence in such a scene when all the lights are green. And for Vice President Harris, right now, and boy, it can change in a hurry, ask the Republican nominee, what's his name again? Ask that guy. But right now, for Harris, all the lights are green. All right, 2 more numbers and I'll stop. There is one inside the Decision Desk averages that I love. This is because I kind of made it up myself. I did the addition here myself. Last poll in 8 swing states, Trump's total net lead was 37 points. That's all the individual leads added together. He wasn't leading the swing states by 37 overall, but it was 37. Now in 8 states, his lead is 9 points. And it's really difficult to point at Nate Silver one week and say, he's full of shit, and then quote him the next week and go, nice work, Nate. But I'm doing this less to support the Decision Desk and Morning Consult polls than I am to help read the vibe, God forgive me. For the first time, Nate Silver's projection is that she has the better chance of winning the Electoral College, 53%, and winning it, he says, by 282 votes to 255 for Trump. He has her up in the polls by 1 9/10 points, largely because his average of the polls in Pennsylvania has her up by a point there. And he has her up in Michigan by just under 3. And Nate Silver has Kamala Harris within 6 points of the lead in Florida. Okay, maybe full of shit was an exaggeration on my part. I'm sorry, Nate. Now, it is August 6th, and if on July 16th I had written all this, all the numbers would have gone the other way. The Harris lights all would have been red, and I would have made you listen to them only in order to try to convince you that encouraging the Democrats to change candidates was the right course. Just as a reminder about how fast things can change even after a decade in which they barely seemed to change at all and certainly never got better. They could revert back to Trump 3 weeks from today, then revert to Harris 3 weeks after that, then revert back to Trump, then revert back to Harris 3 weeks after that, which would be the 29th of October, which would be fine. I haven't seen any polling suggesting one vice presidential option would help her more than any other would. Will have helped, whatever, would have helped. The Associated Press put out a poll on the 1st of the month, and the 1st of this month is so long ago that the poll offered a choice of Josh Shapiro, Mark Kelly, Andy Beshear, and Roy Cooper. No Tim Walz. And Cooper had withdrawn from consideration 2 days earlier, and he was still in the poll. In the poll, 60% of Americans, 57% of Democrats, did not know enough about Josh Shapiro to have an opinion about him. 20% liked him. 20% didn't like him. 70% of Americans didn't know enough about Beshear. Half of Americans knew enough about Mark Kelly. 30% liked him. 20% didn't. Half of them still didn't know who he was. And he's twins. They did, the Associated Press pollsters, somehow cobble together enough data to offer approval data on Governor Walz and found 90% of Americans didn't know enough about him, but that, of course, was before he invented the word weird. all the polling of Democrats seemed unanimous. If it was their choice, the vice president would be Pete Buttigieg. What Trumpists and, of course, political media have been looking for, dreaming of, praying for, is Democratic schism over anything. Biden leaving the ticket. Oh, Democrats in disarray. Nope, we all agreed on that. Harris become his successor this way. That's it. Nope, we all agreed on that too. Who the vice president is, they'll beat each other. Nope. I think we're all going to agree on that. The schism was over the president seeking re-election. The vice presidential choice is unlikely to leave a trail of disaffected Democrats vowing to stay home because it isn't Tim Kaine again. And again, Reuters said it was Waltz or Shapiro. They and Mark Kelly met with her on Sunday, and all I will do here is again hearken back to the 80s. On the night of July 16, 1980, it seemed so likely that former President Gerald Ford would agree to become Ronald Reagan's running mate that a bunch of morning newspapers around the country published the story as if it were a done deal, and a New York radio station was still going with it the next sunrise, hours after the negotiations had collapsed. Of the two supposed finalists, my reaction is, sure, whoever you like, Madam Vice President, just write it down somewhere. Slightly deeper analysis points to these questions. How is it that Tim Walz reads old and Josh Shapiro reads young when Walz is only 9 years and 76 days older than Shapiro? And by the way, Mark Kelly is 2 months older than Walz. It's the hair and the glasses. Walz looks a little like Rupert Murdoch because of the hair and the glasses. Solution? Get him new glasses. Problem solved. Of course, it's deeper than that. I look at it and wonder exactly what Shapiro brings outside of being likely to help carry Pennsylvania, which is a lot. Don't underestimate that. But she might carry Pennsylvania anyway. You wonder if being Jewish still matters today, especially with the would-be president's husband being Jewish. Then you wonder if we have any idea what matters anymore, given that the Republicans have now run 3 elections in a row, an anti-Semitic, anti-democracy, racist bastard. I will say I didn't get any pop out of Kelly, who is married to a friend of mine. Walz has already shown signs he could become as unlikely a folk hero as we have in this country, and whatever percentage of the Kamala Harris reminds everybody Trump is a crazy old man effect that would be given back by going with an older white man like Tim Walz is mitigated by the fact that unless she goes off the board with Buttigieg or somebody else, they are all older white men. Only Shapiro seems to have it more under control. I'm telling you, Tim Walz is 5 years younger than I am. You should be able to make sure he cleans up nice. He's already the first Democratic politician to stick a label on Trump. That has to mean a lot. If it's not the right choice for vice president, he's got to be a secretary of memes or something. Obviously, the identity is the key here, but to me, almost as important is where the new team is going on its opening joint tour. Starting in Philly, well, no-brainer, Wisconsin, then Detroit, and finishing in Phoenix and Vegas, completely logical, but in the middle. They're going to Raleigh, North Carolina. They're going to Savannah. This buzz stuff is for real, and it is spectacular. And if you need any further inspiration, yes, President Jimmy Carter, who a month ago was said by his family to have just days left, has changed his mind. He has told his son he intends to hang on until at least November 5th so he can vote for Kamala Harris for President of the United States. Given that, I think you and I can get our sorry asses out of bed one more time a week and do something more than we are doing now. I'll leave that to you to figure out what the hell that is.
A woman in a van in front of me hit a bear and killed it. A young bear. So I pulled over and I picked up the bear and put him in the back of my van because I was going to skin the bear, and it was very good condition, and I was going to put the meat in my refrigerator. I had an old bike in my car that somebody asked me to get rid of it. I said, let's go put the bear in Central Park and we'll make it look like he got hit by a bike. It'll be funny for people. So everybody thought that's a great idea. So we went and did that, and we thought it would be amusing for whoever found it or something. The next day, it was like, it was on every television station. It was the front page of every paper, and I turned on the TV, and there was like a mile of yellow tape, and there were 20 cop cars. There were helicopters flying over it. And I was like, oh my God, what did I do?
So now we know why Kennedy got out in front of that dead bear cub story, with him telling it like it was a funny anecdote to a barely comprehending Roseanne Barr, who is in his house for some reason as he tells this story. Roseanne blinking at him as he tells it. I mean, way to bury the lead, Bob. Roseanne is in your house. Call the cops. Why did Kennedy do that video? First, he served Trump. He pushed the president of Egypt's bid to bribe Donald Trump with $10 million during the 2016 election. And then having the DOJ investigation shut down by Bill Barr, he pushed that right off the front page. We went from Barr to Bear. In fact, we went from Barr to Bear with Roseanne Barr. Second reason, as they said in the movie The American President, there's art. The New Yorker did not just have the story of the poor, deranged former environmentalist finding a bear, supposedly killed by a motorist, taking the body of the bear, deciding to skin it and eat it, then getting distracted because he'd already planned a day of falconing, as one does. And then, after the falconing was done, going instead to a famous New York steakhouse where they do not serve bear, and he could have done the whole joke about, do you have bear here? Do you serve bear? And they could have said no, and he could have said, oh, too bad, I have one in the car. So he still had the dead bear in his car, and he had to dump the bear somewhere, I guess before the car started to smell, so he drove to Central Park and dumped it there. But he put an old bicycle he just happened to have in his car on top of it to make it look like the bear had been killed by a cyclist. Well, not only did the New Yorker have all that, but it also had a photo of Bobby Kennedy Jr. with his hand in the poor dead infant's mouth, pretending the bear was biting him. And reports from 2014 have surfaced that the poor bear cub had stab and slash wounds. And oh, by the way, the photo of the cub and Bobby Kennedy, in the photo, Bobby Kennedy's fly is unzipped. I'll repeat that. In the photo, Bobby Kennedy's fly is unzipped. Sometimes you eat the bear, and sometimes the bear eats you. I met Bob Kennedy once, and I talked to him several times, and he called me his hero, which was really flattering in 2004. Now, not so much. We met on the field before a New York Mets game in 2011, and he hugged me, and there's a photo, and I have to say, I know he's older than me, but boy, the last 13 years have treated me better than I thought. Don't handle so many dead bears, Bob. All right, so the hero part was from after the 2004 election when I did a couple of reports on MSNBC questioning what the hell happened to the John Kerry vote in Ohio because none of the numbers seemed to make any sense. On election night, officials in Warren County, which is southern Ohio, like Newton Falls, Warren, Ohio, locked down the county administration building and threw all the reporters there from monitoring the vote count and announced that there was a terrorist threat that on a scale of 1 to 10 was a 10, claiming the information came from an FBI agent. The FBI denied that then and denies it now. But they said there was a terrorism threat and everybody had to get out, and they would just count the votes while nobody was watching. Now, this made no sense whatsoever because Warren County was Ohio territory through and through. People in that part of Ohio speak with Southern accents. I knew one of them in college, and he said he was from Ohio, and I had never heard of anybody in Ohio who wasn't from Cleveland. And boy, did he surprise. He talked like this. I swear to goodness. So Warren County should have gone very heavily for George Bush in 2004, and it did. And in 2000, only 28% of voters there had gone for Gore. And then in 2004, 28% went for Kerry. Well, why would there be a suppression? There's no evidence of suppression. The numbers look right. 28% in 2000, 28% in 2004, except that in 2000, Al Gore stopped running TV commercials in Ohio many weeks before Election Day, and he had Ralph Nader going against him in addition to Bush. Kerry competed in Ohio to the last, knowing that it would probably decide the election, and it did. There was no Nader or strong third-party candidate, and yet, even despite all his additional efforts in Ohio, John Kerry got the same percentage of votes that Al Gore had. And I said, how come? And the phone call came in the next day. You are my hero. And it was Bob Kennedy Jr. And imagine this. I mean, understand. I was 9 years old when Robert F. Kennedy was assassinated. Robert F. Kennedy was assassinated the day my sister was born. There really is that kind of visceral family tie to that name. And he's telling me I'm his hero because I raised that question. Well, I soon found out that Bob seemed a little driven by conspiracy theories, even 20 years ago. But given what happened to his father and his uncle and the subsequent, 50 years of daily new conspiracy theories about either or both of them, I kind of let him off the hook about the subject of conspiracy theories. Well, I made a huge mistake. Because as RFK Jr. is discovering right now, the conspiracy theories eventually come around and catch you. He's caught. He is now caught. He is now caught between a bear and New York City. And a picture of himself with a bear and with his fly unzipped. Caught between a bear and New York City. New York City. Wait a minute. Oh, Nancy!
When you get caught between a bear and New York City, sometimes you eat the bear, sometimes it eats you. If you stab a bear and claim it got hit by a bike in New York City, the best that you can do is unzip your fly. Thank you, Nancy Faust. Run like the wind.
Also of interest here, well, yes, my late pup Minet is one of the finalists at the Animal Medical Center Paul-Olympics, and you can see video of him leaping at their sites at Facebook and Instagram, AMCNY on Instagram, AMC Animal Medical Center New York on Instagram, Schwartzman Animal Medical Center on Facebook, and you can vote, I presume, for him, but it's freedom of choice here. I haven't seen any polling on this. How does Minet fare against Trump? Probably better than he was faring last week. In any event, you have to vote today or early tomorrow for the Paul-Olympics. And having watched them, I'd have to say there's some very impressive, three-legged agility dogs, and there's some cats that can jump like 17 feet straight up in the air. I'm very impressed by them. Minet's your winner. But besides that, there are two different Supreme Court justices on the three-person worst persons list, and honestly, has anybody ever seen Clarence Thomas reading anything or listening to the lawyers at the Supreme Court? Because from what we know of him publicly, all he has done for the last 20 years is accept all expenses paid, travel, and vacations from Harlan Crow. There's more of them. That's next. This is Countdown.
This is Countdown with Keith Olbermann.
Thank you, Bob Shepard, as portrayed by Larry David. Still ahead of us on this edition of Countdown. No more of those impressions. The singing was bad enough. The anniversary is Friday, and I am not going to bump Thurber on Friday for it. I mean, it's 36 years now. All the principals in the story are pretty damn tired of it. Although I love the story because it proves you can accomplish great things by getting out of the way, by doing nothing and just letting everybody else do all the work for you. I broke the story of the trade of Wayne Gretzky from the Edmonton Oilers to the Los Angeles Kings, as important a moment as there has been in the history of the development of hockey in this country, particularly anything west of St. Louis. I did it by just answering the phone a couple times. I mean, I didn't even have to leave my office or anything. The Gretzky trade of August 1988 and my absolutely unnecessary role in breaking it, and things I promised not to tell next. First, there are still more new idiots to talk about. The daily roundup of the miscreants, morons, and Dunning-Kruger effect specimens who constitute today's worst persons in the world. The bronze, worse, Neil Gorsuch of the Supreme Court Gorsuches on the Biden ethics and term limits plan. Mr. Gorsuch, I hate to call him Justice, it would be meant ironically, Justice Gorsuch says, I'm not going to get into what is now a political issue during a presidential election year. I don't think that would be helpful. And then he gets into a political issue during a presidential election year. He adds, quote, I just say, be careful. Hey, Justice, which one of you perjured yourself in front of the Senate about Roe v. Wade, Gorsuch? Biden should be careful? No, you should be careful. Remember how Chief Justice Roger B. Taney ended up when everybody decided they weren't going to listen to him anymore? In a boarding house by himself, counting his fingers and toes. Worser, this is the Supreme Court edition of the program. The silver goes to Justice Clarence Thomas. Now, you'd think he would have met his quota of graft and corruption and bribe-taking, but no, he hasn't. From the New York Times, Thomas failed to publicly disclose additional private travel. Has anybody ever seen him at the Supreme Court? I mean, when Laura Ingraham and I went out on our one actual date that was not a hostage drama, where she took me hostage. That was the one in New York. The one actual date we went on was in Washington, and she took me to the Supreme Court and had me sit in Justice Thomas's chair at the Supreme Court, at the main room, at the main courting room, at the supremest of the Supreme Court portions. She had me sit there so I can say I put my ass in Clarence Thomas's seat and did nothing for this country, exactly as he would have done. Well, the point of my mentioning it now is he wasn't there then. Has anybody ever actually seen him at the Supreme Court? It seems to me all he does is drive around the world in an RV and get carried places by people paying for him, and he doesn't seem to think there's anything wrong with this. Billions of dollars worth of free travel. All right, billions may be an exaggeration. But the Times reports he failed to publicly disclose private travel provided by the wealthy conservative donor Harlan Crow again. What does he do for a living? Well, I'm involved in logistics. What kind of logistics? I move Clarence Thomas around the country. A top Democratic senator has said this in a letter filed yesterday. Customs and Border Protection records. Customs and Border? I mean, he had to go through customs in his graft? Are you going to declare anything? Yes, I take a bribe here. I'm taking a bribe. Customs and Border Protection records revealed that the justice and his wife, Virginia, took a round trip between Hawaii and New Zealand in November 2010 on Mr. Crow's private jet. I'm guessing that's not a short hop. That's not going from one Hawaiian island to the other. And what's the difference? It's to a foreign country on a private dime. Are you declaring anything? Oh, I'm corrupt as F. According to Wyden's letter, Senator Ron Wyden, the Democrat of Oregon, one of my favorite senators, writing to Mr. Crow's lawyer, demanding that he supply more information about the financial relationship between the two men. But you know what's worse than this in Republican circles? The thing that may actually undo Clarence Thomas? It's not the graft. They admire the graft. They all think they're going to get a cut of the graft. Their goal is to be that way. There's studies done of conservatives who believe that their financial situation will someday be everything they've ever wanted. Conservatives worth $10,000 are convinced they're going to become multimillionaires. That's what the Trump appeal is. They've done study after study after study indicating this is literally true. This is the way they think. They're all going to win the lottery. They're convinced of this. They admire this. Look at what this self-made man has done. He has managed himself into a position of being the most bribed man in America. More than an usher at a ballpark 50 years ago when you could pay him 50 cents and get a better seat. You know what's going to do him in with the Republicans, though? Not this. They're going to build a statue to him. And, out of gold. What's going to undo him is when they all realize that Clarence's wife never had any children. So that means, according to the Republicans, they should be set adrift on a loose iceberg somewhere. Do I have that right, J.D. Vance? If that is your real name? But our winner, the worst, Elon Musk, the whiny little B-word immigrant son of a... You may have heard that he responded to violent protests in England, stoked by the right wing and falsely blamed on immigrants, of which Elon Musk is one in this country and in several others. He has written in response to this, "Civil war is inevitable." Now, apart from the fact that he owns a website and he is seemingly encouraging civil war in the United Kingdom, it turns out that last November, Elon Musk responded to another one of these money idiots on Twitter, Zero Hedge, by answering something that he posted on November 1st of last year. Civil war is brewing. On the 13th of last November, to Radio Genoa, Europe appears to be headed for civil war. On October 20th, he wrote, Europe is headed for civil war. Something else like that on October 14th last year. Let's see. Civil war is brewing November 1st. If corrupt trends continue, he wrote to Douglas K. Murray on the 10th of October last year, civil war in Europe is inevitable, among other things. Elon seems to be wrong a lot on this one topic, but that's not going to stop him. He's going to keep writing that civil war is inevitable, even though it clearly is not. It's almost, we have, 5 examples, 6 examples here, God knows how many more. We all have lives to live, unlike this pasty idiot. All he has to worry about is if he gets his Ozempic in on time. How many times has he claimed this? As if he wanted civil war, as if there were money in civil war. Well, there probably is. Elon, how has he not OD'd yet, Musk? Civil war, my ass. Today's worst person in the world!
The phone rang in my office at Channel 5 in L.A. Hi, I'm a viewer. I took a deep breath. You never knew where a call that started like that was going to end up. I just wanted you to know I was out golfing at the Riviera Club this afternoon, and Bruce McNall, the owner of the Kings, well, he just walked through the locker room saying, hey, guys, if you want to buy your season Kings tickets, do it now. I just traded for Wayne Gretzky. The price is going to go up next week. To be polite to the viewer, I asked a few questions, but frankly, the story was pretty stupid. This was the second week of August 1988, and there was a lot of talk that the Edmonton Oilers were going to trade Wayne Gretzky, the most famous player in hockey, and there was nearly as much talk that that trade would send him to us in L.A. But the owner of the Kings just telling passersby at random in a golf clubhouse that he had just made the trade. I was suspicious that I was being pranked.
15 minutes later, my phone rang again. Hi, I'm a big fan of yours and I watch every night. Here we go again. I was just having lunch with a friend of mine out here at the golf course in Bel Air, and like an hour later, freaking Bruce McNall shows up in the dining room and asks for everybody's attention, and he says he's just completed the deal for Wayne Gretzky, and now I was beginning to get actually worried. I was a lame duck as the sports director of Channel 5 in Los Angeles, and for months there had been rumors that I was moving down the street to Channel 2 in Los Angeles. There had been these rumors mostly because I was moving down the street to Channel 2. The deal had been done months earlier. We were going to announce it that week. In fact, as these two guys called in, I had actually been busily packing up my Channel 5 office. My thought now was that the sportscaster at the local NBC station, who had a bit of a substance problem and a nasty temper and a real dislike for the fact that I was nearly as popular as he was setting me up. I had once managed to mislead him into thinking we were about to break a story about a big LA football trade. There was no breaking story because there was no trade, and he had actually mentioned it on the air, having clearly stolen it from me because I was the one who had made it up, and oh, was he furious at me. For all I knew, he wanted to embarrass me 3 weeks before I moved into direct competition with him at 5, 6, and 11. This August 8th, 1988 was in fact my first day back after I had burned all my Channel 5 vacation time, and for all I knew, this guy at NBC had been having his staffers call me for a week with made-up sightings of McNall confirming a Gretzky trade that, frankly, I never believed was going to happen. I mean, not to get too sidetracked here, but one day my phone rang and it was a kid who said, "Hi, Mr. Olbermann. I'm sorry, but I'm a finalist to be an intern here at Channel 4 for Fred Rogan. And Mr. Rogan says I can have the spot, but only if I call you up right now and say, I'm sorry, if I call you up and I tell you to go F yourself." The kid did not say F. To his credit, he used his real name, Bill Weir. He later became a sportscaster for the Third network station in L.A., then a correspondent for ABC and now CNN, and I have not let a year go by since without reminding him of his F yourself internship phone call. He said life paid him back by making him work with the guy for several months. Anyway, back to Gretzky night. Two supposed listeners have called to say that Bruce McNall, the owner of the LA Kings, is apparently traipsing through golf locker rooms and dining rooms at country clubs to tell them he has completed a trade for the Babe Ruth of hockey, Wayne Gretzky, and they're calling me because they like me. I'm suspicious. And now the phone rings again. This guy was playing golf at the L.A. Country Club. Same story. McNall, buy your Kings tickets now. I just got Gretzky. The next caller had been at yet a fourth club, I think Wilshire or something. If this was a prank, it was a big one, and bluntly, I had begun to admire it. Finally came a fifth call. "You don't know me, but I watch you every night. I stumbled onto a story I think you'll want to run tonight." I said, "Which golf course were you at?" And he said, "Excuse me? I was in my office all day, and so was my missus. She's on the phone with me. She works for Bruce McNall, the Kings." This time I grabbed a pencil. "Honey, why don't you take it from here?" And she did. She worked in the finance office, and she had literally, she said, just made out a check for $15 million to the owner of the Edmonton Oilers, Peter Pocklington. She said, and the note memo where you write what it's for, I was told to put in Wayne Gretzky. She also had seen the trade contract, identified the players the Kings were going to give up with the $15 million to get Gretzky. They were Jimmy Carson and Martin Gelinas. There were also draft choices, but she didn't know or didn't remember the specifics of which ones. Now breathless, I asked her if I could call her back through the switchboard of the LA Forum where the Kings and McNall's offices were, just to confirm she was who she said she was. She said I could. I did. She was. I believe, in fact, she turned out to be the only person on the McNall financial team that did not get charged with something. So now I went in to talk to my news director and to the producer of our newscast. We were not on until 10 p.m. It was now about 7. They were very excited, and they said that given that I had exact details from a Kings source, plus the 4 witnesses to the owner of the team shooting off his big bazoo at every golf course he could reach, that we should run it, and that we should run it as the lead news story right at the start of the newscast that night, which we did. The Kings would not confirm it, obviously, but as soon as I got off the air with my sportscast, the second time I reported this story, a reporter from the Associated Press was on the phone asking me to read him my script, which he then quoted word for word and put out on their Sports Wire. It was on the back page of the New York Post the next day. My friends called me from New York to say, hey, your sportscast is on the back page of the New York Post along with this big picture of Wayne Gretzky. The leak caused the Kings to move up the announcement of the deal from their original plan, which was Thursday the 11th, to the next night, Tuesday the 9th. A Kings vice president told me at the press conference that the Oilers were enraged because they had wanted to hold off until the 11th because the deadline for their season ticket holders to get their deposits back were Wednesday the 10th. The Kings were nice enough to let me, of all the TV guys, interview Gretzky first live, and I congratulated Wayne on the move, and he actually congratulated me on the scoop, and I said I didn't do anything but answer the phone, and he thought about it for a second and said, pretty much the same for me, and we've been friendly ever since. But the laziest scoop of all time did eventually come back with a sting for me and some payback. A year later, we all submitted our best stories for consideration for the local Emmy for Best TV Sports Reporting for the calendar year 1988. I submitted, surprise, surprise, the Gretzky scoop. The Emmys were always judged by a committee of television types from a different city, so you didn't have that home L.A. bias. And the guy from NBC who I had first thought was pranking me about the Gretzky story had somehow found out that the Emmys for 1988 would be judged in 1989 in Ohio, in Columbus, Ohio, I think. So he managed to get an interview with Morgana the Kissing Bandit, who was this scantily clad, buxom woman you may remember, who in the old days of innocence used to bribe her way onto Major League Baseball fields and bounce out onto the plate or the mound, and she'd go and kiss stars like George Brett and Nolan Ryan during games. Morgana Roberts, lived near Columbus, Ohio. So sure enough, at the Emmys the next year, my exclusive report of the trade of hockey's greatest player, Wayne Gretzky, was one of the finalists for the Los Angeles Best TV Sports Reporting Emmy. But in the ceremony, and it was at some old landmark hotel in Pasadena, they showed clips of all the pieces that were finalists and then announced that the winner was Fred Rogan, KNBC, for being chased by Morgana the Kissing Bandit. My agent stood up and booed. My girlfriend punched me in the arm and said, "Let's get out of here and go drinking." We left. Every time I've seen Wayne Gretzky since that day, and they let me do the first TV interview with him live on LA television, and then they all laughed about how the Oilers got stuck with all those returned season ticket deposits because I broke the story prematurely. Every time I've seen Wayne since then, he's given me kind of a dead fish look, like I screwed up some plans. But interestingly, Mrs. Wayne, the great Janet Jones, just looked at me and smiled prettily and went, "Thanks," like that. It was really sweet. I've done all the damage I can do here. Thank you for listening. Brian Ray and John Philip Chanel, the musical directors of Countdown, arranged, produced, and performed most of our music. Mr. Chanel handled the orchestration and keyboards. Mr. Ray was on the guitars, bass, and drums. It was produced by TKO Brothers, and they can correctly and truthfully say they had nothing to do with my singing. Our satirical and pithy musical comments, however, are by the best baseball stadium organist ever, Nancy Faust, who has stepped into the world of composition for the first time. She was the one who suggested that song. So thank you, Nancy, and address all of your letters of complaint to Nancy. care of me, I guess. The sports music is the Olbermann theme from ESPN2, written by Mitch Warren Davis, courtesy of ESPN Inc. We haven't played the sports music in so long. Hold on a second. You know what I should do right now while I have control here? I should just play the sports music so that you remember what on earth the sports music sounds like. Let's see if I could still find it here on the control panel. It's got to be here somewhere. Yes. Oh, here it is. Pretty good, huh? Yeah, I suggested they use that on ESPN2 all those years ago. It was produced by ESPN2 and appears courtesy of ESPN Inc., and it was written by Mitch Warren Davis, a lovely man I've never met, but he did that song that's based on a bongo drum song that played in Ken Burns' last addition to the documentary about baseball. I know, you're not listening anymore, so I can just keep talking about this. How about we restrike the music for the outro? We call it the outro music. Where is it? There it is. As I was saying, other music arranged and performed by the group No Horns Allowed. They have been so pleased by their association with this program that they broke up as a group. My announcer today was my friend Larry David doing his impression of Bob Shepard, the late announcer at Yankee Stadium. Everything else was pretty much my fault. This is my actual Bob Shepard impression from 50 years ago when an outfielder named Bernie Carbo played for the Boston Red Sox, and Bob Shepard did 2 seasons announcing at Shea Stadium, the home of the Mets, the temporary home of the New York Yankees.
And leading off for the Red Sox, number 1, Bernie Carbo. Number 1.
My announcer today was my friend Larry David, and everything else is pretty much my fault. That's Countdown for this, the 92nd day until the 2024 presidential election, the 1,307th day since convicted felon Donald Trump's first attempted coup against the democratically elected government of the United States. Use the September 18th sentencing hearing. Use the mental health system. You've got it, President Biden. Use presidential immunity to stop him from doing it again
While we still can.
Well, you still can. And also, anti-Semitic, anti-immigration nutjob Republicans, please stop shooting at Trump. The next scheduled countdown is tomorrow. Bulletins as the news requires. Till then, I'm Keith Olbermann. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, and good luck.
One last. Air it out. When you get caught between a bear and New York City, sometimes you eat the bear, sometimes it eats you. If you stab a bear and claim it got hit by a bike in New York City, the best that you can do is unzip your fly. Yeah, thank you, Nancy Faust. Run like the wind.